Hello, everyone. Welcome to Easter at Fairmont Park Church. We're excited that you've chosen to worship with us. Because of the nature of the quarantine and the nature of the internet, we know that you can literally choose to worship with anybody around the world. And so thank you for choosing to spend some time with us today. Have you realized that this might be the only time in our lifetimes that church doors are going to be closed on Easter Sunday? We certainly hope that it never happens this way again, but we're thankful for the technology so that you can join us in this way. We feel like we're living in a historical moment, and certainly as people in the future look back on what's going on now, they'll consider it a historical moment. Can you imagine what it was like 2,000 years ago on that first Easter, especially if you were a follower of Christ, that you saw Jesus crucified and buried in a tomb on Friday, and then on Sunday you heard that he was alive again, and some of them even got to see him and speak to him and talk with him. And nothing that happens today can change the reality of what happened 2,000 years ago. So even though we can't be together in the same place physically, we can still worship the resurrected King together.
I was buried beneath my shame. You could carry that kind of weight. It was my tomb till I met you. And I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my truth till I met you. She called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day.
day that the highest King would welcome me. I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Through the sunsets free, oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was asleep to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Through the sunsets free, oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. The sun sets free, oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
So obviously it's Easter morning this Sunday, and we're excited to celebrate one of the perhaps the most pivotal event in the history of the world. One of the odd things about the Gospels is that the birth of Jesus is not covered in all four of the Gospels, but the death of Jesus is, and his resurrection. So we could read the Easter story out of Matthew or Mark or Luke or John, but for a specific reason, I want to read it out of the Gospel of John this morning. So John chapter 20, and the verses are going to be up on the screen. It records this. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They've taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." So Peter went out with the other disciples, and they were going toward the tomb. Both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. And stooping, he looked in. He saw the linen clothes lying there, but he did not go in. And then Simon Peter came following him, and he went into the tomb. He saw the linen clothes lying there and the face cloth, which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the clothes, but folded up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scripture, that he must rise from the dead. And then the disciples went back to their homes. So Jesus was in the tomb before sunset on Friday. He was out of the tomb around sunrise on Sunday. And the greatest evidence of its truth is that we're here today, still talking about it and still worshiping that same Jesus. The claims of Christianity were so easily disprovable in two ways, especially in those initial days. Number one, if Jesus were actually still dead, then somebody could have produced a body, and Christianity doesn't even last today. But the other thing is this, the other evidence. If Jesus never appeared to the disciples post-resurrection, then they never would have changed from unbelievers returning to the safety of their homes into men who turned the world upside down, and most of them being eventually martyred for their beliefs. They not only believed that Jesus rose from the dead, but that afterwards they had seen him, and they touched him, and they spoke to him. No other religion makes such audacious claims that were so easy to disprove, but they were never disproven. Now, that's the story of the resurrection, but there are events around it that are important to us today, I think, especially. And so if we keep reading a few verses, we'll read some more about what happened after the resurrection. In verse 11, Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she stooped to look into the tomb. Up till now, just the men had looked into the tomb. And she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. And you can imagine a hole in the side of a mountain, probably dug into rock, and there was like a bench in there, a slab of stone where Jesus would have been laid. And these angels said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" And she said to them, "They've taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." And having said this, she turned around, and she saw Jesus standing, but she didn't know that it was Jesus. And Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" And supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Now, on previous Easter Sunday mornings, we've done this before. The question is, why did Mary think that Jesus was a gardener? She was in a cemetery. She was near a tomb. That would be an odd place to see a gardener. But remember, we talked about the first time that a garden is mentioned in the Bible. And the first garden mentioned in the Bible is in Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, and it's the Garden of Eden. And what this means is, in his resurrection, Jesus reversed the power of sin that arose in the first garden. He reversed what happened in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve sinned. Now also, in addition to that, part of this story tells us that Mary saw two angels seated on the slab of stone in Jesus' tomb. My question is, have we seen this image before? And the answer, of course, is, or I wouldn't have brought it up, the answer is yes. And so we go all the way back to Exodus when the people are being freed from Egypt and freed from slavery, and God's making a brand new nation. And he gives Moses all of these laws. Part of those laws had to do with the tabernacle and the temple and the priests and how they were going to worship. Listen to this. In Exodus chapter 25, starting in verse 10, God says, "You shall make an ark of acacia wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length." And a cubit is about 18 inches. So this is about 4 feet long. A cubit and a half its breadth, and a cubit and a half its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold. Inside and outside you shall overlay it, and you shall make on it a molding of gold around it. And then we skip down to verse 17. "And you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, the same length as the ark." So this is going to be the lid. "And a cubit and a half its breadth. And you shall make 2 cherubim, 2 angels of gold. Of hammered work shall you make them on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub or 1 angel on the one end, and 1 cherub on the other end. Of each of 1 piece with the mercy seat shall you make the cherubim on its 2 ends. The cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings, their faces one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall be the faces of the cherubim. And you shall put the mercy seat on the top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony, or the laws of Moses that they were later called. And there I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 angels, the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, I will speak with you about all that I will give you in commandment for the people of Israel." This is what's neat. The angels made the tomb of Jesus a new Ark of the Covenant where he fulfilled the law of Moses. The resurrection ended the power of death and of sin and of the law. So we get 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 56, and it says this: "The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law." It's the law that points out what is sin and what's not, and the law can't help you obey the law. It can just tell you whenever you messed up and sinned. The power of death is finality and separation, and anybody who's lost somebody you've loved know what finality and separation feel like. But for Jesus, the separation and finality only lasted 3 days. The power of sin is the law with its justice and its punishment. For Jesus, justice and punishment were satisfied in 3 days. For us, death would have been final, and it would have been a complete separation, and the punishment of sin would have been insurmountable for us. But for Jesus, all of those things only lasted for 3 days. And just as it seems odd for a gardener to be in the cemetery, it might seem even odder for a throne, mercy seat, to be in a grave. Any old god could put a throne in a temple. In fact, that's what most gods that are made by man do. The true God must reign also in the midst of the tombs, amongst the ruins of civilization, or he doesn't reign at all. He has to reign over everything or nothing. He's not a God of life if he can't bring life even from death. And this Easter, it might feel like death is winning and that the resurrection didn't mean what we were told it meant, but that's a lie. For a while longer, there will still be death, but forever there will be life. Listen to what the Apostle Paul wrote when he was thinking about the consequences of the resurrection of Jesus in 1 Corinthians. He said, death was swallowed up in victory. And then he's talked smack to death, and he says, "O death, where's your victory? O death, where is your sting?" Jesus conquered death and illness and fear, and Christians are the only people who can possibly live like that's actually true.
How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning, that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Jesus, yours is the victory. Oh, hallelujah. Praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah. Death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living